And that's a customer who buys from you, not just because you have software, but because they say to themselves and they say internally, we got to go with Pat's company because because their software is good, but more than anything, they understand this better than anyone else. And we got to be on their rocket ship because they're not going to leave us behind.
This is the Sales Bible Podcast, episode 356, The Elevator Pitch of PASA, an interview with Rajiv Nathan.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers, and today we meet Rajiv Nathan. He's the founder of Start-up Hypeman. He helps technology-based SaaS startups scale to success, and he does this by leveraging stories that define first the brand identity and then convert buyers into clients. According to Rajiv, the startup environment is designed for failure. 9 out of 10 startups crash and burn, and they never become a growing concern. So, how can luck be tipped in your favor? Rajiv believes that stories can shift the statistics, and he likes to start with the elevator pitch. And so, with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Rajiv. Are you ready to babble?
Let's do it.
You're a business consultant, from what I can see, with something called Start-up Hypeman. What is that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can call me a consultant or you can call me a hype man, but I work with fast-growing companies. It's essentially to help them not suck at telling their story. And that's mainly through how they pitch themselves to either customers or to investors or to whatever audience makes sense to them. So I'll work, with companies that are at a Series A stage or Series A or B or C stage on their messaging, their demo call flow, and their overall sales engagement strategies. And I'll also work with companies that are getting started, that are seeking seed investment and help them develop their investor pitch.
So you're making an assumption right off the bat here that story is somehow important for rolling out a product or a service. Is that true?
Yeah, it's actually, my mission. I have a little wisecrack in my mission, but I say hey, you know what? 9 out of 10 companies fail. The amount of venture funding is staggeringly low for women and minority-owned companies. And so to me, it's hey, this is an environment that's designed for failure overall. And my belief is that story can actually carry a lot of these companies forward to shift that statistic. And the joke I put in there is I envision a new reality where the 3 guarantees of life, because we use story, are death, taxes, and your startup actually makes it through the end.
This is really true. I'll tell you why I'm laughing. I've worked on a lot of startups, and it's absolutely true. 9 out of 10 die, and it's not an easy death.
No, it's slow and painful, and you got to have right product and everything. You got to have product market fit. But I think that the challenge with a lot of companies is they spend all this time developing a product, but they don't spend so much time getting to understand their market. And by not doing that, they don't really think through how do we need to communicate to this market. And they, a lot of times, at least, and I'll tell you, especially with the companies that do make it into that Series A, B round level, they end up getting caught in feature wars and feature battles with their competitors, where their whole sales call, their whole demo call is, hey, here's our platform. Let me show you all these different things about our platform, which A, it's boring as hell, to have a call that way. But B, that essentially just pits you in this feature battle with whomever your competitors are. And when that's the case, the buyer ends up making a decision. If they choose to even move forward with anyone, they generally move forward with the company who either has the perfect integration with their own tech stack, or whoever has the lowest price. And that's not what you want customers to be making decisions on. You don't want them buying because of lowest price. or because you just happen to get lucky and have the perfect integration with their tech stack. You want them buying from you because they believe in the vision that you have for the industry at large and where you can take their company.
The thing is, these inventors, commonly they get started by scratching their own itch. They see a problem, they think they've got a solution, they hack something together, and then they go off and try to sell it. And then they're like struck by reality, like other people just don't see it.
Well, have you ever watched Shark Tank? I'm sure you have.
Oh yeah.
Right. So there's a handful of episodes where they don't get the investment, and then in like the post pitch little interview they do, you'll hear the entrepreneur saying, "Yeah, they just couldn't see the vision, or they just didn't get the vision." And I'm like, whenever I watch it, I'm like, or is it that you didn't properly articulate your vision? Is it their fault for not seeing it, or is it your fault for not doing a good job communicating it?
And that's where you're coming in. You're saying the best way of doing that is with a story.
Exactly. So when I'm talking with CEOs, when I'm working with them and their teams by extension, they've got a particular vision in their head, but it's not being articulated in the day-to-day boots on the ground sales and marketing interactions. And that's what creates that gap of, hey, here's what I believe our company should be. Here's what we need to be doing in the market to make some noise, to stand out. And then yet it's not trickling down to the team because there's something going on between what's in their head and what they're saying out loud and what their team then says out loud. And that gap is figuring out the story.
How do we bridge this gap?
Well, there are a handful of ways to go about this. I think the simplest approach to at least start with is understanding what is your core pitch, your core elevator pitch. And this is true if you are the CEO leading the company, if you are the sales manager working with your sales team, and if you are the account executive, the SDR, or the marketer. And to me, the elevator pitch is so fundamentally important because it is the foundation for all of your communication. It's not just like a convenient soundbite. It is something that you would say, it's not just that it's a convenient soundbite. It is something that serves as the bedrock for how you communicate your brand across all your channels, whether that's like the live interactions or the more passive marketing collateral. And so several years ago, I developed a formula for this that I call the PASA pitch method. And Pat, do you know any Spanish that you would know what PASA means?
It means no.
All right, we need to get maybe after the show. I'll send you some introductory Spanish lessons. So PASA in Spanish just means "what's up" or "what's happening." It's like what a friend would say to someone else when they come to meet them. Hey, ¿qué pasa? Right? ¿Qué pasa, amigo? So that's what it means in Spanish, what's up or what's happening. And that's what I feel like a fundamental elevator pitch should do. It should tell people what's up with the business. And in this case, PASA is an acronym, PASA. Problem, approach, solution, action. Problem, approach, solution, action. And now the idea behind PASA, that's how you develop your fundamental elevator pitch. But it's not just that it becomes your soundbite. Again, it is that bedrock of communication. So then if you understand this, then your cold email, your prospecting strategy is built around PASA. Your demo call strategy is built around you're basically extending on PASA. Your pitch deck is an extension of PASA. And then your marketing and your ads, right? They're all extensions of PASA. That's why I so firmly believe in like that idea of the upfront pitch, because I'll tell you, I have a lot of conversations where someone's like, oh man, if I just had like, an hour with them, then it's easy for them to understand the value. And it's like, yeah, but you don't usually get that hour. And especially if you're just trying to get their attention up front and get them interested up front. And so, my belief is like, hey, if you can't describe this well in 60 seconds or less, good luck in 60 minutes.
How would you distinguish this from what I commonly call a value proposition?
So it is their value proposition, but in a way where you can actually verbalize it and speak it. So I think a lot of times people think value prop, like, and here's an easy test is like, if you ask someone, hey, what's your company's value prop? They typically will respond without having like the words that are truly correct. They will respond with something like, oh, well, our value prop, typically what I would say is blank, even though it's like, why would you affront that with, well, typically what I would say is blank. So the idea, it's what the K-PASA pitch is doing is taking the value prop and giving a framework to actually communicate it to an audience, whatever that audience might be.
Got an example?
Absolutely. Probably my all-time favorite one is from a company I helped them raise their Series A through their pitch, and they've since been able to scale the team, and even through the struggles of COVID, they have been able to survive in the industry that's been there and that's been greatly affected, and continue to push forward, which has been awesome to see. And in this case, the company is called Fan Food, and their CEO Carson, when I first met with him, I was like, okay, like, pitch me. What does your company do? He essentially said, alrighty, so Fan Food is a live event concession mobile ordering app. The value add for the fans is no lines, no waiting in lines. The value add for the stadium is more per cap revenue. And that was like what he told me his pitch was. Kind of a snooze fest, right? And very technical.
But it is kind of concise. It's a lot better than some I've heard.
It is, yeah. It's concise, but it's not necessarily like inspiring people, right?
No, it's not.
And so using the K-PASA method, what we did was reframe how to talk about this, right? And that's why I'm so keen on the formula of problem, approach, solution, action, because it starts with the problem. The idea of leading with the problem is you give the audience context and frame of reference for why you should exist. But perhaps most importantly, you lead with empathy and you say, hey, I understand what's going on. I understand where you're at. And that's why we have this solution. So using the K-PASA pitch method, what we came up with was, as a diehard sports fan, there's nothing more frustrating than going to your favorite team's game and missing the big play because you were stuck waiting in line for a hot dog and beer. Fan Food keeps you in the moment. Use our mobile ordering concession app and get your food and drinks delivered directly to your seat so you never have to miss the big play again. Download Fan Food in the App Store today.
Awesome.
And you know what I love about that one so much is Carson, the CEO of Fan Food, has had situations where he's delivered that and people have stopped him mid-sentence to tell him what game they were at and what play they missed. I remember I was around him one time when he was talking to a group of people, and someone stopped him and he said, oh my God, that was me. That was me. The Odell Beckham catch. That happened to me. I missed the Odell Beckham catch, the greatest play in NFL history. I had paid $3,000 for my end zone seat, and I had to watch that play on the TV monitor above the concession stand because I had been waiting for 40 minutes just to get a beer. And the fact that someone can tell you a detailed story like that of how they relate to it, that tells you are resonating with your audience.
I love it. I love it. But then you were saying that you can then take this throughout the entire business.
Exactly, right? So at the time, the investor pitch deck we built was built around the K-PASA idea, right? Essentially, you add more detail up front to build up to that problem, and then you deliver that approach and solution, and then explain more about it, and then the industry and stuff, and then that's your pitch deck. For any company, even if you're not raising money, if you're selling your product, right? You're doing active B2B selling. You take that PASA formula and you build your sales deck around it. And if you're not using a sales deck in your demo process, that's another conversation we can have. And I'm happy to go down that path. But in your demo call, or whatever you want to call it, your discovery call, you have your sales deck that is built around the PASA formula. And again, it's the same concept, right? You have some buildup that crescendos at this problem, and then you say, okay, but we can do something about that. And here's what we do, and here's how it helps others, and so on and so forth. And then as you actually platform demo, like the screen share, quote unquote, you speak in a way where you're constantly, it's almost like you're weaving this tapestry of constantly speaking in a framework of like problem, approach, solution, and action, right? You're not just being like, okay, so here's what this feature can do, and here's this feature here, and here's that. It's like, okay, so let's say your fan at the game is in this situation, and this is what they're struggling with, and here's what's happening on your side, like, and you're freaking out. Don't worry, you don't have to panic about that, because here's what we do about it, and here's how it works on the back end. Right. So you start to just talk in a way that you're constantly keeping the audience in mind. And that's kind of like, my banner I like to put on things is I'm big on how do we treat this more like entertainment, less like business. And so my like leading sort of mantra is think like an entertainer, because the entertainer's goal is make a connection with their audience, make an emotional connection with their audience, elicit a response from them. And that's what PASA is designed to do. It's designed to make that emotional connection.
I'm really interested in what you said earlier about how this could be part of a sales deck, and that and I get the sense that you believe that's really important that sellers have a sales deck at a demo. I'm not so certain about that, although I'm certain the process that you're speaking about must be done during the demonstration. Maybe you could go a little deeper. Why do I need that PowerPoint deck?
Okay, so you need it if there's a couple contingencies here, okay? And I'm glad you asked that. So as I see it, every company has three types of audiences, three types of customers, I should say. You have customer group A, which is the I already know what I want group. Okay, these people are like so advanced in their buying state. By the time they talk to you, as the title says, they already know what they want. So you kind of just have to like answer some questions for them and give them pricing, and they're on their way.
And by the way, people are saying, what I'm commonly reading is that this is becoming more and more the case as people do a lot more shopping on the internet than they've ever done before. And that 60-70% of the decisions made long before they ever talk to a sales professional.
So that's true. Yes. People have come in informed. I mean, I would say at this point, no one comes in uninformed. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that 60 to 70% of the people are coming into the call knowing why they should be doing something, or knowing the depth of their own challenges or pains or problems. It's that they know 60-70% know who you are and have looked up what you do to some extent. So that I already know what I want group to me is not just that they've looked you up. It is that they have already well acknowledged they have an issue and are already like in the works of doing something about it. Like the other, whatever needs to happen internally is already like put in motion.
Gotcha.
So they come to you like ready to buy.
Got you.
And so you're kind of just playing defense in that case for those customers. Again, answer their questions, don't screw up, give them some pricing, and they decide yes or no. There's another group, which is the I've been burned group. And these are the customers, the ones who worked with a company similar to yours, a competitor of yours, and they had a really bad experience. And so they come to you with hat in hand because they've been beaten down by the other company. And they're kind of pissed off, though, at the same time. But they do know, it's like they started as an I already know what I want, and then they had a bad experience, so they became a I've been burned. They do know this is something that they need. and that they can't go without it. And so they come to you with a bad taste in their mouth. And again, with that group, you're just kind of playing defense. You're answering their questions and just, they already know they need the thing. They just want to make sure you're not going to screw them over the way they previously have been screwed over. And so both of those groups exist for pretty much every company. And while it's fine to have those customers, get them, get as much of those as you can, typically what happens is you're also price locked by those people because they're in their mind, they are so advanced and so ready to do business. They also already know what price they want to pay for it. And you're kind of at the mercy of whatever price they say. So if they think what you charge is too low, you're really likely to come down and give them a discount because they're ready to do business like today. Now, the third group, which I look at as if you think of a visual, I think of this as left, right, and then this is the center group, is what I call the guide me group. These are the people who need their hand held along a process, who kind of understand they have a problem, but they don't necessarily know the depth of it, and they're not quite sure what they should do about it or if they should do anything about it. These are the ones where the sales deck, the presentation really comes in handy, because what you're able to do after you've done solid discovery, that's the caveat, you have to get to understand them first. It gives them a story to follow along with, and it shows them a path towards success that software on its own, just showing a platform on its own, cannot provide. And what I find when at companies where we introduce the sales deck into the process for that guide me group is that this is the thing that moves them off of choosing to opt for status quo. Like, they came initially to the call, they were thinking of doing something, they're not totally sure, but then ultimately they're like, after a couple rounds of calls, they end up deciding, you know what, we're fine how we are. We don't necessarily need to, we don't need to prioritize this right now. But the presentation helps generate that, well, here's why something should be done right now. Here's why you need to be doing something about this, because here's what you're missing out on and here's where you can gain from it. So it helps move them off of status quo. And if you think about your company versus a competitor's company, there's a good chance that company, that competitor, is just showing software and nothing else. And so now you've got a one-up on them, because when in the buyer's eyes, software is pretty much equal to each other. Like most software that operates in a competitive marketplace, they're all roughly the same, give or take one or two features. They're not deciding based on features anymore. They're not deciding based on perfect integration. They're deciding based on vision, because you, if you've done your job successfully, have shown them software in the context of, here's our point of view on the industry. Here's our point of view on you as a company. And here's our point of view on where your company needs to go to meet the direction that the industry is already moving in, that we believe in, that we stand behind. And that's a customer who buys from you, not just because you have software, but because they say to themselves and they say internally, we got to go with Pat's company because their software is good, but more than anything, they understand this better than anyone else, and we got to be on their rocket ship because they're not going to leave us behind.
This is brilliant. Rajiv, I've never had anybody walk through these three different types of customers. People who know what they want, people who've been burned, yet they know what they want, and then the group that wants to be guided.
It's an interesting breakdown, right? And I think even if you just know that up front, if nothing else, I think in sales interactions, it helps you just better decide how do you become, like, what kind of salesperson do you need to be in that moment, right? Because if you know there and I've been burned, you can be like, okay, hey, this is a playing defense call, right? If you know there and I already want it, this is a playing defense call. Yep. But if they're a guide me, and again, I have to stress, you've got to ask the right questions up front first. You can't just give a pitch and be like, all right, buy from us now, right? There has to be a process of understanding them first. But if you do that part correctly, then you've got a chance to instill a belief system in them. and I don't mean to like veer this off course too much, but one of the things I was talking with one of my clients about a couple of weeks ago, I was reviewing their demo calls, and they were having a feature war with a prospect, and it's what I'm working with them on to get them off of that. But I said, look, you have got to look at not just your product, but the company you work for, the brand you represent, as a belief system. This brand is a religion. Now tell me, what are the rules of your brand's religion? What is the belief system here? Who needs to buy into that belief system, and who's not part of that belief system? Because really, in all actuality, think through everything that's happened in the world through centuries, somehow religion always prevails, right? And every major religion has its belief system. You know what it means to be in, you know what it means to be out. And regardless of any ups and downs in the quote unquote market, the brand of religion, right? Each religion's brand continues to prevail and power through.
Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, I totally get that. I have like a million other questions here, but we're running out of time. If people wanted to find you, Rajiv, where would they go?
So I know if anyone listening right now is like me, there's a good chance you didn't like carve out 30, 40 minutes out of your day to sit down and do nothing but listen to this podcast with a notebook by your side. I think we both love to believe that people do that. But I mean, I listen to podcasts, and usually I'm listening when I'm in the car or at the gym or, commuting, right? Or just basically while multitasking, grocery shopping, cleaning, etc. So I know we covered a lot today. And so for any of you who are, multitasking while listening to this, just go to startuphypeman.com/Pat. I've set up a page there, and I've got a download of the PASA guide that walks through the formula and with some discussion prompts for how you can create your own PASA pitch. So it's startuphypeman.com/Pat. And aside from that, please connect with me on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/in/Rajiv Nathan. I'm active on LinkedIn almost to an annoying degree.
You've also got a podcast, right?
I do. Oh, wow. And my voice cracks. So clearly I'm a great host for the podcast. And clearly I'm great at promoting it too, because I just forgot that I had a podcast. Yeah. So
that's what I'm here for. This is why I'm here.
My podcast is called Start-up Hypeman, the podcast. Weekly episodes with different entrepreneurs, CEOs, and leaders in the startup ecosystem, where they talk through specific growth strategies across either sales, marketing, or people that they've been implementing at their company. And every now and then we get someone who comes on to talk about something that they tried and didn't work. And I think those episodes are really fun as well. And if nothing else, you may want to tune in, because every guest, I introduce them to the show like they are a pro wrestler entering the arena.
That is awesome. Pull the microphone down from the ceiling.
I should get that set up, actually.
There's a lot of echo. Okay, so before you go, if you were to give our listeners a piece of advice you could take action on this week, what would that be?
One piece of advice to take action on this week. On your next demo call, I encourage you to delay sharing your product for as long as possible. See how far into the call you can get without having to actually show your product. Because I promise you, you will have a much healthier conversation if the basis of your call is not having to stare at an admin dashboard.
I totally agree.
So take the dashboard delay challenge. We can call it that. How far in your call can you go without pulling up your product on screen?
Yeah, I love it. Rajiv, thank you for babbling here on Sales Babble. I really appreciate it.
Babble on, my man. Thank you for having me.
I really agree with Rajiv's advice that during your next sales call, delay showing the product as long as possible. Instead, focus on the problems, the issues, the hopes and dreams long before you open up the home screen for the demo. When you do this, you exercise the law of influence. That's the law defined by Bob Burg's book, The Go-Giver, where your influence is determined by how abundantly you place the other people's interests first. To connect with Rajiv, you can find links to him, his website, the PASA method, and his podcast at www.salesbabble.com. Not to belabor this, but one of the best ways that people hear about Sales Babble is through customer reviews. If you could take a moment and leave us a 5-star review, hey, I would really appreciate it. And if you got a question or a comment, if you could go to salesbabble.com, you can click the Babble Me button. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have about this episode or other episodes from the past. That's all we've got for today, folks. Until next Tuesday, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.